Hey, everybody. If you are joining us on Zoom, as I can see people rolling in from all different places, why don't you guys, we got a small crowd here and we're coming to you on Zoom. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to jump on. I remember, Dan, do you remember a long time ago when we first met and I was trying to start a church and there was a handful of us that got together. We grew that sucker to 250 people. I also remember as a kid wanting to build a clubhouse and thinking that it was like the Shangri-La, and it wasn't. And it was just small, and three of us would get together. We would do it at the Hamilton Mountain Brow on the way down the mountain. And there's about three or maybe five of us. We all had these scooters, and we would race around when we were like 13, 14. Actually, at that point, I was 10, 11, 12, race around, get into trouble, but it was our little group. So welcome to the very first live event, I think, for Real Estate Wealth Lab. And I see a whole pile of people jumping onto Zoom right now. So if you are joining us, welcome. I can't be as interactive with you as I normally do. I want to go over a couple housekeeping things. One, let's get this, our agenda today. We've got two specific speakers. We're going to talk about Toronto, what's happening in the real estate market, and then we're going to explore how to create crafting and compelling offers. And Kyle Guthrie will be coming on. Just a real quick, our team is quite varied for REWL. You can take a picture of this if you like. I'll introduce Kyle and Frank later on, so I will go through this pretty quick. Legal disclaimer, if you are coming to us on Zoom, take a snapshot. What this means is that if you are going to go buy real estate, don't do it just on what we do here. This is for education. This is what we're sharing, our own knowledge, our own experience. Make sure you get proper legal advice. And of course, if you are interested, if you're thinking of getting into real estate, don't do it on your own. Give us a call and we'll set you up with a 20-minute consultation. So first of all, our first speaker is Frank, and Frank is no stranger to REWL or to Toronto. He's really well known in Toronto. I believe, Frank, that you are in the top 1% of realtors in the GTA. Am I correct on that?
Our team, yes.
Your team. That is really, really hard to do, to be at the top of your game. There's tons of realtors. Most of them don't sell many houses or maybe one a year or less. And then there's a handful of people that really rock it. And so at REWL, we're really trying very hard to connect the right people to you. So Frank, come on up. Now, I also know, Frank, that you are not just a realtor and an investor, focused realtor. I know that you are a rap star. You've got Juno, you've been nominated for Juno Awards, all kinds of stuff. So share a little bit about who you are and jump right in.
Okay. Thank you as always. Well, you kind of set the room up pretty remarkably here. So let's just start with the Juno part.
Yes.
For everybody at home. One of the things that always has driven me personally is the passion to do things that you love. And to me, that's a pretty short list. You got food, you have music, you have entertainment. There's a few things that just drive people's passion. And if you're passionate about stuff, then it never feels like work. And you guys probably have heard this a million times. I find that getting into real estate was an extension of that passion. And what I loved about real estate more than anything else, guys, that I can share, and I'm sure that not just the people in the room, but the people that are taking their time out at home, I salute you as fellow soldiers, because it says something about your character to want to try and create the freedom for yourselves, for your family, or whatever you're doing. And that's really just like the left brain talking to the right brain, right? The pragmatic side and the logical side, and then you have the emotional side. So we're going to move on here. I'm not going to bore everybody, but I do want to talk about how we ended up at Harvey Callison, the room that we're in here. And I want to tell you guys that when I was getting into real estate, I have a pretty simple concept that follows me around everywhere. You need to align yourself with the best people in any industry. So when I was in music and we were studying John Coltrane, we were playing a saxophone in the jazz band. That's the guy that I wanted to study. That's the guy that I wanted to emulate. So we ended up at Harvey Callis for a couple of reasons that I want to share. To me, this was really important. It was family owned. Their number one independent office in Canada, 4.5 billion in sales last year with 280 agents, 60 locations. And this is not to brag or boast, guys. I'm just telling you that the most important thing on this list for me was that it was family owned. Our team ended up here because, again, a very simple concept. If you're willing to put your own name on something, your own family's name, the trust and the integrity factor was high. And I can tell you that when I was getting into real estate, it's not lost on me. It doesn't have the greatest stigma. You know, being a realtor in Ontario and Canada, when there's like 70,000 agents, trust, integrity deals. So that was really important to us, okay? And then their affiliations are global. Again, I'm only sharing this to let you guys know that you're about to spend some time getting a bunch of information from us. I want to qualify that information. I want you to feel like it's coming from a place of real knowledge, right? Global reach. We do presentations just like this. This is Chinese Realtors of Ontario, Crespo. I can tell you we do presentations here. I can't remember how many agents are in this group, but we're talking thousands. Again, investors all over the place trust the information because we don't base it on one piece of criteria, okay? This is the team. I'm going to tell you, in a world that's very divided, we're divided. You can see our team has guys that with hair and guys without hair. I'm part of the guys without hair club. But even within that divisiveness, we find commonality. No, on a real note, I can tell you what you probably know. Nobody's good or great at what they do if you're not surrounding yourself with great people. So the smart guys in the room are here. I'm just a guy that speaks for them, but I got to say I'm proud of who we are because we're an extended family about the same thing. And again, you know, this is us just receiving a director's award, just talking about how many deals that we do and that the information is real, okay? I'm going to back up here a bit. So what does this really all lead to? I can tell you that in my whole life, probably the principal lesson my dad always taught me, and something I'm going to share with you guys, is that decisions that you're going to make in life, whether it's family, business, or otherwise, are largely going to be based on not just the information, but the people you're surrounding yourself with. So this is an extension of what I'm talking about. The reason why I'm at the Real Estate Wealth Lab, the reason why I'm at Harvey Callis, the reason why I've been with my wife since I was 16, the reason why like Anthony and some of the guys on our team, we've been together for over 20 years, is because I put a lot into making the decision about surrounding myself with the people that you want to be with. I can't leave anything more with you today than that. Like if I walk away right now and you understand why we're with the Real Estate Wealth Lab and what you need to look for when you're getting into whatever it is, the art of sealing the deal that you might learn today, or anything revolving around real estate. The principal perspective is you're going to make a decision, and that's going to be based on the information you're getting from the people around you. So this leads into psychology. What are we talking about here? And I'm going to try and tell you how I've always looked at real estate. You got a bunch of buyers and you got a bunch of sellers. In fact, when we're looking at around the room here, I really talk about opinions and people having them kind of like grains of sand. I'm going to tell you that you're going to hear a bunch of stuff from us today, including myself. You're going to agree with some things and you're going to strongly disagree with others. You might hate a bunch of stuff. You might love a bunch of stuff. That's the real estate industry. The opinions are as vast as the grains of sand that are on, and this is what I call, for me, I always say, it isn't until you get all those opinions and you start putting them together, and then you start to figure out what does the real estate beach look like that you're about to embark on. Now, does the beach look like this, or does it look like this? And anyone that wants to underestimate location in real estate, this is a perfect picture on that. But I can tell you that it isn't until you get all those opinions, and in the current market, you ask one person and they might have been in a bidding war and they got a great number for their house. Then you got somebody sitting in a condo and the product sitting there for months and months. So depending on who you're asking, you're on one of these beaches and they're going to have a very different perspective about what's happening in the world. So it's uncertain. And like I said, you don't want to end up on a beach like that. And where does this uncertainty really come from? You know, I can tell you that our team is really good about collecting data over years and time. This slide, I want you guys to pay real close attention to because I was in the market in 2012 as a realtor. And I remember vividly because I was helping my brother who was just about to get married and they were buying a home and this was in the news. right there, I mean, you can see Trudeau up in the corner there. He doesn't look the greatest in that picture, but you're about to get burned. How Canada looks like the US before the devastating house crash, March 5. Okay. And this wasn't the only bad news. Leading up to that in 2010, other articles, Canada's housing bubble. That's all I was hearing for a good 24 months. Constant negative news, we know. Did it happen? Well, I can tell you the house didn't burn. In fact, if you look at 2010, 2011, 2012, keep going, guys. It just keeps going up all the time. Now, we've had obviously a few plateaus up and down, but the bad news isn't real. And I do this every day. Why do I do it? I can tell you guys that I'm not personally a victim of bad news or bad media, but I do have enough conscientious awareness to realize that my clients are exposed. And when you marinate in energy that's sometimes negative, things like this come out. So you can see here, top line, Liberal government threatens to withhold Ontario funding due to lack of affordability housing. So we're trying to have affordable housing in Toronto, and they're threatening to pull back. Further, you got here, the CMHC says first-time home buyer incentive to be discontinued. So the very program that allows first-time home buyers that don't have enough money for that down payment is being retracted. Now, they're going to come up with something new, probably, but that's going to make it even harder for first-time home buyers to buy. Again, a whole bunch of negative stuff saying, hey, are these people going to leave the market? Is the market going to crash? Is it going to keep going down on us? Well, I'm going to share this slide with you because it was a super valuable lesson for me, and it kind of puts things in perspective. Kyle's in this photo with me, Ken, Real Estate Wealth Lab dudes, but we've known each other, again, for a long time. What did Bill Clinton share with us that day? And I kind of make a joke of this. This is the day that Bill Clinton got to meet Frank Felico, but it was really the other way around. But while he's in the audience, he was talking about when he was going for his position as president and the constant bad news and publicity that he was getting. And he basically said something that still resonates with me to this day in his accent. He was basically saying that a broken clock can be right twice a day. So if for 20 years, the media keeps telling you that we're going to crash, sooner or later, one of those months, they're going to get it right. And that lesson stuck with me for a long time because it's the very lesson that I think prevents people from moving, from doing something real estate, is that they hear so much negative news that they don't know how to behave. And then all of a sudden they become, let's say, restrictive or almost handicapped. I call it like the straitjacket of real estate. The media and the marketing can do that. So it's my job, obviously, as somebody in real estate, to at least curb that, to make people understand where we're going. And that's where this comes in. I start doing what we always do with the team, is just having a bit of a perspective. Now, I'm going to go too far back, but in 1850, obviously, Toronto was just being born, 60,000 people. You know, by 1973, we grew to 2.1 million people. Where am I going with this? In 89, the Sky Dome was created. By 95, the Raptors were a team in the city. And in 2017, we're at 6 million people. And now we're sitting at 6.6 million people. What does this mean? Well, I want you to take a look at this number, guys. 65,000 sales in 2000. What's that?
It means lease sold and won.
I like that, Kyle. My money's not on the lease. So if you're putting your money on anything, don't put it on the lease. Maybe the Raptors might win again. But 6.6 million people and only 65,000 sales happened in 2023. And there's 70,000 agents. But I digress. What does this mean? Well, if you do the math, guys, 65,000 sales, 1% of the population that was actually in the game, that's usually in the game, give or take, is affecting how we all feel about a market. That's very, very telling, right? I always tell people, put it in perspective. Who are the 1% of people that we're talking about here? Well, I can tell you that if you want to understand something about real estate in Ontario, in Canada, and you don't know these 1%, or you're not aware of what they're feeling, then you're going to be displaced of understanding what the market's really doing. So I can tell you just from our personal team, we do a lot of deals. Most often, our deals fall into one of these categories. Somebody's either going through a divorce, maybe a new job, maybe they lost their job, maybe they got promoted, there's a health issue, maybe a baby's being born, maybe somebody's getting married, perhaps somebody's passing away, and now they've inherited property that they can't handle, aging, new students. These are the 1% that affect the 65,000 sales that we had. Now, everybody else is still in the market, but I got news for you, and I don't want to be condescending when I say that those people are just spectators. They own homes. They're not actively affecting the market. And I deal with a lot of that, obviously, right? A lot of people not understanding that What our team does is pay attention to the 1%. We understand that these guys are what I call the must sell, must buy people. They can't afford to wait for the market to switch. If you get home and your wife kicks you out of the house and you need another place, you can't afford to say, you know, maybe the market will move in 8 months, maybe I'll do it then. Or if somebody unfortunately passes away in the family, or you're expecting, I remember I was in the must buy scenarios. I think it was 2007. We had a baby. There was about 18 months go by and we're expecting our second baby. And my wife's like, we got to get closer to my mom. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for the market to help me out. I had to make a family decision. Do you keep your wife happy, or do you try and market yourself in the right time and place? Well, anybody that wants to keep their wife, and I'm looking at a lot of smiling faces in the room here, is going to always err on the side of that unless you want to end up on the street. So anyway, we pay a lot of attention to this, and I encourage whoever's watching this, room or otherwise, pay attention to these demographics. They're important. And how are they behaving? Well, here are the numbers for 2024. Quickly, sales are up. We don't have the March numbers yet completely, but in February of 2024, you can see that the sales are actually up. You can see that the amount of active listings are up, and you can see that the average price is slightly up. So that confidence is slowly coming back from what I call the 1%, okay? Now, I want to put in perspective that most of that climb is happening in the 905, right? So if you take a look at what's actually contributing to this rise, the detached homes in 905 and the semis, as well as the towns, are really driving most of that initial optimistic growth. So put it in context. If you're shopping in the 416, I'm just telling you that there's still a lot of deals to be had, okay? And people kind of, ask me this question a lot, to be honest with you. They're going to say to me, well, Frank, why is it that the 905 is growing the way it is? Well, you guys have heard that the city has proposed a tax increase for property taxes. When this came out, it was 10.5, but I think, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 9% is what they... 9.5. 9.5 is what they ended up at. On top of that, recently, Olivia Chow, not to blast this lady because she gets a lot of bad publicity, unfortunately, as it is, but they're talking about introducing a rain tax on how much rain your home gets. Listen, guys, it goes on and on. I don't need to tell you. If you live in the 416, double land transfer tax, foreign tax, like they're hitting you with tax upon tax upon tax. Since I was a little boy, this has been happening, to be honest with you. My parents came from Italy. Most of my friends and family, even today, in some way or another, are directly connected to immigration. Immigration has definitely been the foundation of the city. That leads obviously to multicultural and festivals, pride. So, and you guys heard me say this probably on previous calls. It's an amazing city to be where you can, and we're not perfect by any means. I'm not suggesting that racism and bigotry, we're a big city, that stuff happens. But there's enough communities that support you in this city, no matter what you are. If you're from the gay community, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're Russian, if you're not Russian, if you're Portuguese, whatever you are, there's a community already here in Toronto that will accept you, that will help you, whether that be professionals, accountant. That kind of comforting feeling keeps that immigration coming in. And you throw into the mix, however you feel about our healthcare system, hospitals, the tolerance for our differences is at an apex from what it is global. And all you got to do is look at south of the border and see how divided they are. I'm not saying that we're not, but the tolerance meter for us is really high. That keeps bringing people in. And then I don't want to discredit the 5 sports teams that we have. Cal, you mentioned the Leafs. A lot of people don't really appreciate the economic powerhouse having a professional team in a city does, right? So for instance, Oklahoma has a basketball team. They don't have a hockey team. They don't have like all the things that we have. You start to look at the fact we have a baseball team. We might get an NFL team in the next 10 years. Who knows if that happens or not. But those are centers of economy in and of itself. And that draws a bunch of people. Absolutely, Kyle.
Well, like even another example could be, look at what happened to the city of Oakland. They lost 3 sports teams. And now that city is like, big chains are leaving, Walmart's leaving. Like, you can see the ill reverse effect of what sports teams can do.
100%. And since we're on that topic, I'm young enough to remember that Montreal used to be the preeminent city of Canada. Formula One, Expos, the Canadiens, the Olympics were held there. when they went through the whole French versus English debate thing, a lot of corporate left there. They lost the expos. Things start happening, and you need to pay attention to those things because they do matter to how a city ends up, developing. So that's one of the reasons why everything that I said up until now, which is like, even though you're seeing tax upon tax and all the bad news and this and that, why Toronto keeps growing is the numbers just support what they support. Like, this is the average price in February. We hit an all-time high at 1.3. We're sitting at around 1.1 right now. And these are the real immigration numbers for 2022. These are big numbers. 2023, 185,000. And this slide really just shows you the correlationship between the price and the immigration. So the immigration are the bars on the bottom, and the price. And you can see how much they correlate with each other. As the immigration, you saw in 1990, 91, 92, when we had our last crash, immigration kind of went down a bit. And as it climbs, so does the price. So we pay attention to this kind of thing. And I get asked this question a lot all the time too, Frank. Can you predict the next crash? Absolutely, Nira.
Frank, quick question on the immigration. Is there a lag time, like when immigration goes up?
Yeah.
How far? There's probably a lag time before it affects the housing market. You know what that would be?
If I'm being totally honest, I don't know the exact timing, but I can tell you how to look at the lag time. And this is what we look at. The lag time is really categorically segmented into two sections. You got people that come in and they need to rent immediately. And then you have other people that are coming with real money and they want to buy immediately. And then most of those folks can't do anything immediately because it's hard to get the inventory. So if you're a renter and you're new to the country, you guys already know, because I'm an investor, I have properties. I can tell you that they're reluctant landlords to pick a new person that hasn't been at a job for 5 years in the country and doesn't have T4s in the country and so forth and so forth. So that lag time is spread out through months and months, but the desire is there. It's so high that some way, somehow they figure it out. So maybe there's an uncle that's already here. Maybe there's an aunt, they co-sign. Maybe they go into a house together. So in most cases, I will say that it can be immediate, the effect to the market. It's just that it doesn't show up in the numbers immediately. Right. So, but the impact, meaning they're in bidding wars and they're losing them, right? They're in rental bidding wars and they're losing them, but they're affecting the guy that's winning, right? So imagine around, we're going in on a bidding war, and let's say we want to get a condo, $2,200 a month, no problem. Now we got 4 other offers. The 4 competing offers might be new Canadians. The landlord might pick us, but those people put pressure on us now to go from 2,200 to maybe 2,250 or even 2,300 to win it. So I can tell you that the impact from that perspective can be immediate, but it doesn't show up in the numbers.
Right.
And that's one of the considerations. And again, I always get asked, well, when are we going to crash again? I know that history is sometimes a great lesson that can teach us things. And I'm not saying, that it repeats itself all the time. But the last time we had a legitimate crash was 90, 91. And I always tell the team, in order for me to feel a certain way, I have to see at least similar things. So when we had that crash, interest rates were in double digits. Unemployment was also double digits. So those are two crazy pieces of criteria that need to happen. And then the third one, which was, and this is from the TREB, is a real important chart, guys. This is probably the one I look at the most. If you want to really take a picture of this, it's probably the most impactful one, which is how much of your dollar at the end of the month is going towards mortgage, principal, interest, and property taxes and utilities. The last time we had a significant crash in the GTA was 1990, 91, 92, and over 50% of our dollars were going towards that. Now you can see during COVID and so forth, we started creeping up, and I don't need to tell you guys, I go shopping like everybody else. My dollar doesn't buy me as many tomatoes as it used to. My dollar doesn't get me as much gas as it used to. So the affordability thing is real, it's happening, but our unemployment is still relatively low. So you can see during COVID, we were hitting, almost double-digit unemployment, obviously because of the scenario, but our interest rates were low. And immigration was still good. So those things are all working almost like I would say like a choir or a 400-meter relay race, like one connects into the other. So if you have high interest, but unemployment is low, and then you got a bunch of people coming in, the market's not going to crash. You have to have like several things happening all at the same time for something significant to happen. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't deals in the market, that it hasn't come down. We've seen those numbers, but I don't want to paint the doom and gloom picture because I just don't believe it. I don't see it yet. I don't see enough of that evidence for that to happen. What I do see, and this is just real data, in 22 years, we've had the lowest sales volume we've ever seen, in a city that has the highest population we've ever seen. And that same city has the lowest inventory available for that population that we've ever seen. I didn't even wake up a lot of times in an economic class, but I can tell you that supply and demand is on the screen, and it's self-evident. Like a lot of times people say, you know, why are you good at what we do? I can tell you it's because we don't really do a sales job. We really just talk to people like, what is the observational universe telling you? This is what it's telling me, observationally. In 22 years, I've never seen the sales this low of volume. The GTA has never had more people than we have, and the inventory to supply those people has never been lower. That tells me that there's a self-fulfilling potential prophecy that the prices are going to go up again. And that's why we're starting to inch towards that way, in my humble opinion. Now, why did they come down? Everything that we were just talking about. Look, in April of 2022 was the first interest rate hike, and we've talked about this often. I remember around when we were kind of debating about what to present the group today, what to talk about. This is the hot topic, which is like, can we give them something new? Because everyone's hearing this. But this is real, guys. As the interest rates go up, the prices go down because the affordability starts to get affected. Now, where am I going with this? Well, I'm going to tell you that in 2020, a lot of clients that I've helped, and not just me, but the thousands and thousands of other agents across the GTA, in 2020, the interest rate was the lowest that we've seen in this province, maybe in our history. But those mortgages are going to be renewed over the next 12 to 18 months. And they're going to be renewed at a much higher number, which is something to pay attention to. And I'm going to give you just like a quick little case study around this. In February, I just took the average price in February 2022. What the average home was going for was $1,334,000. This was an eye-opening experience for our team. You put 20% down, that's $266,000. Everybody follow? Okay. At a 5-year variable rate, and that was a really low rate, 2.45%. The monthly on that property was $4,861. Okay. Now, great news to buyers. The prices have come down. That same house now, the average is $1,108,000. Now, if you kept that $266,000, it's not only 20% down, it's actually 24% down. So you think, hey, I'm going in with even better equity position. But the 5 years currently at 6.95%, and look what a family has to come up with. And the prices in this relationship to interest rate is what I tell people, like most of the buyers and sellers that I'm dealing with are not buying houses cash. So that pendulum of how the interest rate affects everything that we're talking about is as real as this. So, you know, you can make an argument here and say, okay, would I have been better off buying the home at 1.3 and change, spend $200,000 more in cash, but my monthly is better? Or do I go here? And here's what the crazy thing is. Most of the people that bought in 2020, 21 are going to be facing this increase. It's a very real increase if they don't start dropping the interest rates. Now, we have heard the Bank of Canada is talking about dropping them incrementally again by June and so forth. But I'm here to tell you guys, you can't bank on that as a 100% thing. They don't behave in a way that you can predictably measure all the time. Anyway, this case study is the one that I would say in the last 6-7 months has woken our team up the most to realize that we have buyers that bought during this time period of 2020-21 that they got those low interest rates. We as investors, I can tell you that there's guys on the team that own properties as landlords that are looking at these numbers saying, hey, I was doing well when it was at 2%. I was cash flowing nicely. But now that it's gone up and now that I got to renew, I'm not too sure. And that's what we're paying attention to. And this is one of the things that, let's be honest, in 20 minutes, I can't capture the essence of how important these kind of dialogues are. But when we say, okay, why the Real Estate Wealth Lab, sealing the deal, all the things that we want to understand about the market, when you start to look at the 1% and the psychology and how it gets affected, it's all affected by this thing. Go try and help a family in 2024 that just saw their payment increase from $4,800 to $6,000 a month, and now they got to think, hey, can I put the kids in hockey or can I do that? Can I put them in soccer? Can I not? Like, are we going to go to Florida this year? Okay, these are real questions that they're having, and then it ultimately impacts the market. And that, my friends, is my time for now. But that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I hope I kept it under 20 minutes because I didn't want to bore our audience.
No, not at all. That was
Good.
wonderful.
Okay.
You need another 2 hours with that presentation. There's a lot of information out there.
There's a lot in there.
100%. Awesome. And the two things I heard from you today, do not marinate in negative energy, which is
100%,
huge,
yeah.
right? And then observe the data, which is so important. So speaking to professionals in either the rural group or collegial group to really get the nuts and bolts of where you're going, what the market's doing, and understand the moves you need to make. Correct?
100%.
Beautiful. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, my friend.
So thank you very much for our first speaker there. I'm going to be introducing our next speaker, Kyle Guthrow. Kyle is an investor, an agent, a former contractor. Kyle, what else have you been up to? You're a professional speaker, and you're going to be helping us today seal the deal with negotiation. So without further ado, Kyle, join me on stage. Welcome.
All right, let's see. So I've got digitally here in front of you guys. So I'm going to try and make sure I'm not wandering too much and blocking PowerPoints and the like. Give me 30 seconds just to set up and I'll be ready to roll. All right, so make sure we're good. Oh, there's my beautiful face and Frank's beautiful face as well. So, who's Kyle? I'm sure my mouse is moving. Is that normal? Okay, so I'm a real estate investor. I have been for the last 16 years. Every time someone asks me how long have I been in the business, I often forget because it just feels like yesterday that I bought my very first property in 2007, and time does move very quickly. I'm also a licensed real estate agent like Frank and the rest of his team. I have done everything in real estate and close to everything except for one thing, which is land development. Buy and hold, fix and flip. I've done Airbnbs. I have done construction financing, multifamily. But I do have to say, there's something beautiful about taking an absolute piece of crap house and turning it into something beautiful. I'm obsessed with fitness and nutrition, and I'll dive into that in a little bit. Like Lewis said, I am a public speaker. I am also shared the stage with Grant Cardone, which was a really cool experience. I will share that as well. And here's a fun fact. I have actually interviewed probably close to 100 people in the film industry, working the red carpet at TIFF. I've done it 2 years and look forward to the third year. Hopefully this year they're no longer on strike, so I'll have some interesting people to interview. Enjoy traveling, love golfing, been golfing for 25 years, still haven't mastered it. That's why that sport's beautiful. And I have a little dog Maltese named Marvin, who is the joy of my life. For those that are on Zoom, you want to take a picture of my QR code. For those that are here, take a quick picture. It will link you to everything you need to know about me. The only thing that's not in there is my blood type and if my organs are for donation, but everything else is in there. So if you need information, click on that QR code before I click it away. Okay, so I thought we would dive into the wonderful world of negotiations. And before people maybe turn a blind eye to it, I want to remind everyone that we do negotiations every single day. Negotiate with our kids on whether they should be wearing a jacket before they leave the house. You negotiate with your spouse on where to go for dinner. You even negotiate what you want to buy when you are at a drive-through. These are all little things that we kind of took advantage of. But there is some method to the madness. And I'll dive into understanding negotiations, preparing for negotiations, effective communication, rapport building, techniques and tactics, handling objections, which is a big one, and going in for that almighty close. And I will be pulling up somebody from the audience to do a little bit of role play later on. So, understanding negotiations. Basically, it's involving 2 or more parties. And why is it important? Well, just like in everything, in business, How do we buy a house? Through negotiations. How do we sell a house? Through negotiations. Yet, so many people miss opportunities on how to negotiate properly. Show of hands. How many people have negotiated at Canadian Tire? I have. Did it work out well? No, it didn't. But there is certain things that you can negotiate on. When you're at a hotel, can you upgrade me? Little things like this that people don't tend to ask for because they're embarrassed of rejection. So we'll dive into that as well. And for all those that are on Zoom, just because I am far away from the computer, if you can't hear anything or you need me to move or whatever, just let me know. Annalisa is monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, please, I'll leave it out to the team as well out here to make sure that we get those questions answered. This is interactive. So even though you are not present with us, we miss you dearly. We wish you were here. But that being said, I promise we won't talk about you that are on the Zoom. But we hope that you guys ask questions. So types of negotiation. We've heard of distribution negotiation. This is the old adage, win-win scenario, where we go in saying, you know what, glad hand each individual and say, we're going to try and do this a win-win. Whereas an integrative, the distributive is win-lose, integrative is win-win. So can someone in the audience give me an example of a win-lose negotiation? Frank, think of one. I'll give you a hint. Price.
I mean, the one that always comes to mind for me is where you've made, let's say, the husband happy on something, and the wife is walking out of there not so happy.
So for those that couldn't hear, Frank gave a perfect example. When you're in the buying and selling process, you make one side of the party happy, maybe the husband or the wife, and the other one maybe isn't as happy. So that's an example of potentially a win-lose. Win-win is when you get exactly what you want in all fashions. And this could be that you got the right price, the right closing date, the right concessions. It just also goes beyond just price. A lot of people, like you mentioned in your presentation, Frank, not everyone's price sensitive. People want a good deal. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're price sensitive. There's a lot of individuals in real estate right now that have access to a lot of capital, but they still won't overpay because they don't want to get ripped off. Where to the point where I had this to a client last week, walked away from a property because she didn't want to overpay. And I don't blame her. So preparing for negotiations. Now, for those that are in the sales, cold calling, closing world, especially when you're hammering phones, we often heard this when we were working with Grant Cardone. Get yourself mentally prepared before you jump on that phone. What does that look like? Making sure that you're maybe have access to water. I know it's so cliche and so simple, but yet so many people struggle with, their throat starts drying out because of something as simple as water. Preparing your body. If you're slouched over in your chair while you're making a call or doing a negotiation, that will exude through your voice and through your volume. Also little things like how you start your position. Now I'll dive into this in a little bit more greater detail, but show of hands, people in the room. On average, who typically wins a negotiation? The person that speaks first or the person that speaks last?
That.
Bingo. Typically, the person that speaks latter tends to win the negotiations a little bit more. The reason why, if you come out of the gate, and I'll touch on this, it's called anchoring, and you anchor your price, you've now revealed your cards. You hear this a lot of times when people are negotiating for salaries. That old age question when you're in an interview. So, what are you looking to make? And you don't want to offend them. You also want to get the job. I hate this question because what if you said $100,000? The recruiter might be saying, "Sweet, we're going to offer them $150,000. You're hired." You left $50,000 on the table. So I'll bring in the presentation some questions you can ask that can get around that. Example of power. Coercive power is another example. Supplier threatening to stop shipments. Now, if you're a person that solely relies on that supplier, does that supplier have an upper hand in terms of negotiations of price? Absolutely. We witness this in real estate in this current market. Buyers have a lot of power right now because sellers have properties that are sitting on the market, and the team at Harvey Kellis can attest to this. Properties that have been sitting for 90 days. Who's got the power? The buyer or the seller? The buyer does, right out of the gate. Before you even get into negotiations, you know that's the case. Go back 2 years when it was a hot seller's market, buyers had no negotiating power. Basically, here's the bidding war. You want a condition? You're out. So that's an example of power in terms of negotiations. Communication, which I am an expert in, I consider it critically important in terms of negotiations. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time in this a couple slides later, because it is really important on how you deliver your messaging when it comes to negotiations. Timelines are very important. Said this to an actual client of mine. She was mentioning that she was in a bit of a rush and she was trying to close on a client. And the circumstance or the scenario that played out was she took the call just before she was going into another meeting because she's been desperately trying to get a hold of this client. She said, I couldn't close them. Well, I go, well, why not? You have a great product, great service, pricing's right, everything's. She's like, I had to let him go because I had to go to my next meeting. So time can sometimes hurt you in negotiation, but also taking too much time can hurt as well. We've heard it all before. I need to think about this. That's an objection. I'll dive into that. But saying I need to think about something sometimes can hurt you when you're in your negotiations, because they go home, they speak with their spouse, which all goes on there. I'm advising that you speak to your spouse before making major decisions, but sometimes the time can be our enemy. My pro tip, try to learn the other party's bias and judgments ahead of time. Google is a powerful search engine, and you know who's a close second? Social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest, for all that matters. You can learn so much about individuals by just doing a quick Google search. And for the most part, a lot of people have open profiles now. So if you notice that you're going to be going into negotiation with someone that has an open profile, do you not think it would be beneficial to you to do a little bit of digging, see how they speak? Are they aggressive? Are they soft-spoken? Are they a person that likes to get to the point very quickly? Try to learn their personality. You can learn a lot from someone's social media, even what they're posting. What are they wearing? How are they dressed? Like all these things, these judgments and these biases are super important. The importance of communication, obviously critical to a lot of our success. If you removed communication, we as a species would not survive. We wouldn't be able to articulate our messages clearly. And we would ultimately turn to the animal kingdom. Until the day we can learn to speak to my dogs, our dogs, I think it's critically important that we do focus on other things that are just outside of the verbals that are coming out of our mouth. Effective communication promotes clarity, reduces misunderstandings, and enhances trust between parties. Trust between parties. The reason why I'm emphasizing that one is we're going to dive into how important it is to build rapport and build that trust in negotiations. Obviously, verbal communication. This is an example of verbal communication. Now, if I stood here like a statue and just started speaking, this is an example of pure verbal communication. I'm moving my head even slightly, but if I were to stand here like a robot, you would say, what the heck is wrong with him? In the reverse, if I was talking about nonverbal communication and I was swinging my arms and pointing at the screen and I was going like this and making loud gestures with my body, this is a distractor. So imagine you're sitting across the table from someone in the negotiations and the person is constantly touching stuff. They're playing with their pen. I don't have a pen with me. They are tapping the table. You're feeling their knees shaking against the table. These are nonverbal cues. As negotiators, pick up on these things. Everyone's got to tell. Now, I'm not a poker player. I was terrible at it. I don't want to blame that my poor nonverbal cues were the reason why I sucked at it, but maybe I hate losing more than I like winning. But those that study poker, there's a lot of people that can look at the cards and show zero emotion on their face, which is very powerful. Same thing in negotiations. This is why negotiating face-to-face and in person is a lot easier than sometimes negotiating over the phone. Now, with the power of technology, Zoom's made that a little bit better because I can still see you, but I've lost that physicality of being able to see, okay, is his leg shaking underneath the table? Is he tapping the table? Like, what are some other subtle cues? Remember also in Zoom, just like you can see, you can't see my legs. You can't see what my body language is doing. And this is what I teach a lot of my clients is pay attention to what your feet are doing. Now, I know I may be standing square at the camera, but if my feet were pointing towards the door, those are tiny little subtle cues that can show someone is not interested, not engaging, or maybe they just want to get the hell out of the conversation. See, our body doesn't lie when it comes to communication. This has been programmed in our brain since we were children. And this is why a lot of times it's really hard to break. Another critically important one, actively listening. You hear this one probably a lot. Those that have kids in the room, I'm sure have said, why aren't you listening to me? Well, they are. They're just maybe not paying attention. They're distracted. Their head's in another space. What could be an example of a question that you could ask someone if they're actually listening? Don't say, do you understand? Can you repeat back to me what I just said? What that allows is to see and reinforce that they, A, were paying attention, and B, they understood you. A lot of times when I work with my corporate clients who are directors, managers, C-suite, the problems they run into is that they speak, but their employees don't listen. And I often ask them, was it one off? Was it one employee, 2 employees, maybe 5 employees of 20? They're like, no, it was everyone. Then who do you think the problem was? And sometimes the managers and those in leadership roles don't like hearing that. So often I tell them, reframe your communication. You wouldn't speak the same way to a 2-year-old as you would a 20-year-old, as you would to a 60-year-old. Clarity and precision, very important. Avoid vague and ambiguous statements. The other one that just drives me nuts. This is for all the business people in the room. Stop with the jargon. Stop with the cliches. They don't work. Now, sometimes they can string sentences together, but I often find people are just mushing up language and word for no reason. So if someone such as myself, I like people that get to the point quickly. You're going to tell me a story, tell it to me in less than 2 minutes. Now, obviously, in the film industry, how do you build characters? You have to spend time, sometimes even half an hour to point out who this character is. This is why, who my friend is in the film industry, and I'm going to give him a selfish plug because he deserves it. He had not 1, but 2 movies on Netflix called Code 8. They made a huge splash on Netflix. My friend wrote the movie, and he was an executive producer, and one of the main characters is actually on my hockey team, Robbie Amell. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. But what he explained was what makes movies harder than Netflix and TV shows is TV shows have 12 episodes to share the story, 12 hours, 14 hours versus a 2 hour. This is why shows such as Game of Thrones and all these got huge production budgets, because people get enraptured by them. People get pulled in by them. Versus sometimes you watch a movie and you're like, I didn't really get that character. So clarity and precision is super important. Acknowledge and validate. Now, a lot of people will often say, that person's not listening. They're not hearing me. Well, what did you do to say to them, to acknowledge them, that were they actually listening? That question I went back to. So explain back to me what I just said. That's a way of acknowledging. Or something as simple as, just to confirm, I want to pause for a second. I do this a lot in my presentations. Just want to make sure, is this resonating with everybody? Yes? See what I'm doing? I'm nodding my head. Remember, your audience mirrors you. So do the people on the Zoom call. So do the people in negotiations. Openness and transparency. I can't believe I got to keep saying this in 2024, but too many people withheld information. Don't be a gatekeeper, because people will get suspicious of this. Frank, you did an unbelievably great job of explaining everything. You didn't come up here and say, hey, do you want more? Well, then you got to come work with me. Well, let me get you signed on a buyer's rep agreement first. No, disclose everything. That's how you build that rapport and that trust. Respect and civility in negotiations is very important. I will say cooler heads always prevail. And I know this is hard, and this is for sometimes the people that have, let's call it anger management issues. I've yet to meet anybody that says, thank you so much for yelling at me. I now understand. No. Unless you're on maybe a pro sports team, even then, a lot of players don't like coaches that are constantly screaming at them. So keep your cool when you're in negotiations as well. This is a very powerful tactic. I've often been in very difficult situations in negotiations when I came from the construction world, when I was flipping real estate, dealing with trades where not everyone, but it was dominated predominantly by males, where their one emotion was anger. And it was sometimes really hard where they'd get in a screaming match saying, can we just calm down for a second? Let's just take a breather. I hear you. But does us yelling make this negotiation any easier? No, it's actually getting in the way. They usually will come back with saying, okay, yeah, you're right. Ask open-ended questions. This one is very important. If you don't remember anything from this talk today, remember this one. Ask open-ended questions, because it encourages dialogue, but also you can learn a lot about the opposing party when you ask a lot of questions. I've actually coined it called question through conversation. And what it often will bring, again, is that who speaks less typically gets more. Reason why? Because if I were to ask you, Frank, what are you looking for in this deal? Very open-ended question. You're going to probably start divulging things, because I'm going to share this. This is very important for those that are on the Zoom. The power of a pause and the power of silence works wonders. Next time you're in negotiations, or you're at a hotel, or you're at Mercedes or a car dealership or whatever, pause and actually look at them. Now, I'm not asking you to stare into the depths of their soul, but the second it starts feeling awkward, push it a couple seconds more. You will find people don't like this, and they will usually start, okay, let me see what I can do. And they'll start hammering on their computer or their keyboard. But if you do it with a smile, it actually goes even a lot further. Now, if I were to look into the camera and go and just stare at you, it's a little creepy. But if I were to look at you, and it would get a little bit awkward if I was smiling and nodding, just saying, not so much. So try this. I know it is very uncomfortable. But with practice, you learn that it's a great tactic. Building rapport, this is very important. Try to find commonalities. Like I mentioned before, Googling them, getting on their social medias, trying to figure out who they are. Remember, everyone, we are in negotiations. You're probably not here to become their friend, and probably after this transaction, you may never see them again. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't take the time and effort to at least build that trust and rapport with them. Because guess what typically happens if they don't? It comes off as, the buzzword of 2024, inauthentic. We think of the sleazy car salesman, no disrespect to anyone that's in car sales, those sleazy door-to-door people. There's inauthenticity. You know why? Because sometimes they don't take the time and effort to build that rapport. If you can, and you know you're going to be working with this person for quite some time, or even the future, real estate agents, pay attention to this. Build a personal connection. If you know that person is obsessed with the San Francisco Giants, what would be a really, really cool closing gift for that person? You clearly have the best agents, because I could not afford to give my client an all-expensive paid trip to San Francisco. But maybe like a signed jersey, a couple $100. Or if you know that they're really into arts and crafts, make that gift personal towards them. Now, what if I were to tell you, some people will say, well, I don't want to spend money on a potential negotiation tactic. Is $300 worth a potential $30,000 deal in real estate? Absolutely. What about meeting them at their favorite restaurant to try and get the listing? I know it might be a hidden expense to you. It might be a lost cost down the road, but that $300 is probably different, or that $300 dinner is different than what other agents are doing. And I can speak from experience. Some agents are very cheap. They literally will close monster commissions and not even give their client something after the facts. You want to take it one step even further. Now, it's not really well done in our industry. Get the other agent a gift. I know that sounds pretty crazy, but it's simply even as simple as sending some chocolates, sending a gift basket. Remember, they were part of this deal. And especially the tricky ones where you knew, and this just happened to me about a week ago, I had no right to close on the condo for my client at the price that we did. I have no idea. And I'm thankfully this won't go out until after the property closes, hopefully, so the agent won't see this. But we negotiated heavily off of the list price. And I had to rely on the other agent to do her job to get that deal over the finish line. So sometimes in negotiations, it's just appreciating and acknowledging those that are going to work as well with you. Be flexible. There's going to be times where people are just not going to move on price. Find out what the other concessions that are super important to them. If you know that they need a longer close, well, sometimes that might be worth more than the actual dollar value. Or instead of maybe not giving them a price, but you make the close faster, instead of it being 90 days, it's now 30 days. You do some reverse engineering. You say, hey, your carrying costs are $6,000 a month, just like Frank pointed out in that mortgage, and you speed up the closing by 2 months, you just saved them $12,000. But it's up to you to figure out what those true concessions are. This is really important. This is for more of the sales and service world. Please follow through with what you negotiate. If you say that you're going to do something in the negotiations and you get what you want, make sure you fulfill on that. I see and hear this a lot where sometimes, this more happens in the corporate world, the sales world, sales team promises the world. And then the fulfillment team's like, what the hell? We can't commit on this. Well, too bad. We have to. So a lot of times you need your sales and fulfillment team talking. Now in the real estate world, as an agent, you are both. So make sure the words that you promised in the negotiation, you can fulfill on the back end as well. One technique, it's called anchoring. And what I said in the before, who speaks first typically doesn't get always what they want. Now, if I was negotiating with Frank, and we'll use a role play afterwards, if I was to anchor my first price out of the gate, let's say we're buying a car and Frank's my car salesman. That's a bad example because we know what the price of the car is. I'll think of one, but oh, there you go. I even gave an example. The first offer on buying a house is typically your anchor price. Now, I often tell this to clients, don't confuse it with your target purchase price. So say we'll use the example of buying again. If you knew that they wanted to settle on $875, well, your initial offer price should not be $875. If the purchase or the list price is $900 and you want to kind of close around $875 as your max, well, what do you think is a good starting point? $840, $850. There's a lot of topics and everyone talks about splitting the difference. It's another tactic. I don't love that one, but it seems to be the most used one, especially in real estate. It's like, oh, what do you always hear? Come on, meet me in the middle. It's like, if I wanted to meet you in the middle, we wouldn't be negotiating. Bargaining. Bargaining involves a series of give and take. This is when we go back and forth. This is more seen as a win-win because you keep going until both parties are kind of happy. Like I said before, you hear a lot about this in split the difference. Again, I don't love this one because ultimately that's not really negotiating. It's just saying, okay, the list price is $900, our anchor price is $850, and then our target price is $875. Now, unless the person's really price sensitive, what are some other concessions that you can come up with that might help you get your client a lower price? Maybe it's finding out that the property is tenanted. And as people in real estate people in the room, they know selling a condo or a house with a tenant in it is it easy or hard? Hard, extremely hard. To the point where some agents will completely skip over your property, even if it's perfect. Now, we live in the wonderful province of Ontario, and is Ontario tenant friendly or landlord friendly? Very tenant friendly. So sometimes when you are in negotiations and you're the buyer trying to get a property with a vacant possession, you might not even get it, even though you bought it. So just FYI on that. Framing. Framing involves presenting information, proposals, or offers in a way that shapes the other party's perception and decision-making. Go on their emotions. Figure out what is emotional to them. Now, let's use example of picking a daycare. For those that are parents in the room, you have a very big emotional tie to a specific daycare. You are analyzing the people that are going to be taking care of your children. Now, unless you do not like your children and do not care, then you probably are just going to pick any daycare. But for the most part, you are going to interview that person. Now, you're not going to be able to maybe negotiate on price because a lot of these daycares are hard set on their dollar amount, but you might be negotiating on other things that are very important to your child, such when is nap time? When are they feeding? Can you make a concession for me here? What happens if you show up 5 minutes late? These daycares ding you with a $50 fee. These are things that you can maybe negotiate with these daycares. Now, again, fortunately, we live in Ontario, and with the population growth happening the way it is, it's becoming harder and harder to negotiate on certain things. But figuring out that emotionality is very important because so many individuals do buy based on emotion. There's a lot of times we buy things because the other person made us feel good. Or they painted a picture of what it would be like to have that product or service. Car ads do an amazing job of this. This is what you're going to feel and look like by driving a Mercedes-Benz. Or this is what you're going to feel like driving the latest Range Rover. They pull on that emotional part of you. A pro tip, if you can focus more on the opportunity rather than the problem it will solve, it typically will work more in your favor. Now, for some services and industries, their job is to go in and problem solve, i.e. a consultant. Tell me about your problems. They're going to tell you about their problems, but it's up to you as the salesperson or the negotiator to paint the picture of what your services and product can solve by giving them the opportunity. So, Naran, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is your biggest pain point right now in your business?
Getting in front of more eyes, getting
Okay.
marketing.
So for those that can't hear, Naran said getting in front of more people.
More people, yes.
Okay. So you have a problem that you need to get in front of more people. My name is Kyle Guthrow. I have a marketing company and I specialize on getting entrepreneurs such as yourself on stage in front of thousands of people. I've worked with everyone from Gary Vaynerchuk all the way up to Tony Robbins. Now, there is a fee that comes along with this, but what if I could tell you that I could get you in front of 100,000 people before the year is over? Would that be of interest to you?
Absolutely.
Now, could you put a dollar value on that?
Oh,
What is that worth to you? See, I'm going to use open-ended questions because I'm going to start figuring out, I want him to reveal his price. Did you notice that I didn't come out of the gate and say, my service is $100,000? I want to hear where his budget is first. I'm trying to get him to divulge his information, but I don't come out of the gate saying, how much are you going to pay for that? How much is that worth to you? Of the who, where, what, why, how, what is the most dangerous word of all of those 5 in negotiations? Shout them out. How? Okay, we got how. Who else? What?
what?
What? Okay, no one said it. Chris Voss is a famous FBI negotiator. He's got a great book called Never Split the Difference. Why is the most dangerous word that you can use in negotiations? Do you want to know why? Because it's accusatory. And if you go after an individual, why did you do that? Versus, what made you do that? I know we're getting into semantics of vocabulary, but it is very important that you use your words properly. Because if I said, that's why I shaped that question, what is your biggest pain point and you're currently experiencing in your business? If I were to say, why do you have these problems? That is a reflection on you saying you're screwing up. So I often tell people when you are negotiating, remove the word why. Focus on what and how. Those are great ones because they're problem-solving words. How can I help you? What brought you into Mercedes today? Great opening-ended questions. Deadline. Now, this is more so for people that are in negotiations like labor disputes. Louis, maybe you can attest to this. Maybe you've seen it. Unions when they're in strike, where they get to the point where they hit a boiling point and negotiations are going nowhere. And guess what? We didn't hit our deadline. We're going on strike. Sometimes deadlines are good because it makes you expedite the process. Because we don't have all day to negotiate. I'll share a quick story. When I bought, the reason why I reference Mercedes a lot, because I've had Mercedes cars twice. And each time I went in there, I dealt with a different salesperson. But what's funny is that the district manager of that particular Mercedes on downtown remembered me. So he brought in his top negotiator against me. And I still wore him out. To the point where Mercedes was actually closing for the night. And I said, guys, I'm not leaving until I'm leaving with this car tonight. They're like, no, we're not. We're coming back tomorrow and negotiating. Do you think that helped or hurt them? It hurt them. You know why? I went to their competition the next day with the exact model and price point, and I slammed it on another dealership's table. Can you beat this? Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you very much. I took that offer, went back into Mercedes-Benz downtown, put it in front of the sales rep, said, you're going to match this price, or I'm going to go buy this from your competitor, which is still Mercedes, at Leslieville. You choose. They gave me more time to do research, and it backfired on them. And instead of just saying, hey, you know what? He wants an extra $2,000 off. Throw in the damn winter mats. Give it to him. They didn't do it. I ended up getting $3,300 off them the next day. Now, again, I don't say that to impress, but rather impress upon. Sometimes time is the enemy when you're in negotiations. Often people say, okay, well, we need time to think about it. What is there to think about? You know, when I hear that objection, you know what that means? You did not do your job as a sales agent. You did not provide enough value. Again, try to avoid rushing negotiations. Realtors, I know this is hard, but we have very busy schedules. And sometimes real estate is 24/7. And we have to take our phone calls when we are doing other things. I often will tell this to clients and to a lot of realtors in the room. If you are in the negotiations and you know that it's critically important, make sure that you try to have that time blocked off in your calendar. I know it's not always that luxury, but Frank, if you are trying to negotiate with another realtor and you're at your kid's hockey game and you're the coach, can you take that phone call? No, you can't. And hold on, Jimmy, I got to step aside and do a negotiation. Sometimes it does call on us. But do you think that you're going to be 100% attentive to that negotiation? No, because in the back of your head, you're going to hear your spouse saying, Frank, get your ass back on the bench. I don't even know if your kids play hockey. I just threw that one out there. They play basketball, right?
They play something.
Okay. I knew it was something. Escalation and de-escalation. This one is important as well. Again, controlling your attitude, the volume you use, controlling your emotions. Do not try to lose your cool. However, there is times where you're going to need to escalate and de-escalate. I'm going to give you an example. Cops, they have a very tough job. I absolutely have a ton of respect for police officers. There's times where they have to use escalation, and then there's times where they do not, and they have to de-escalate a situation. Imagine there is a criminal that is running away, and you are chasing them as a police officer. Are you going to try and de-escalate or escalate the situation? You're going to escalate it. Pull your gun. You're going to try, yell at them. You're going to try and get their attention. We're going to shoot you, whatever. But if you have a hostage situation or a person that's trying to maybe commit harm to themselves, you're going to probably try and talk them down. If they're holding a knife or a weapon, hey, Johnny, what's your, usually we'll ask their name. Let's just calm down. They'll still have the gun at them, but they're trying to de-escalate the situation. So this same thing happens in negotiations. Now, we don't have criminals chasing us, hopefully not. But it is going to be times where you're going to be like, listen, in negotiations, you might have to raise your voice because it could mean the life or death of somebody. You don't believe me? Are you going to sit there and negotiate with your child as they're about to run out on the road? No, you're not. You're going to scream at them to get their ass back on the sidewalk because it is your responsibility as a parent to make sure that they are safe. But if you know that they're not in harm's way, would you scream at them? Maybe not. That's an example of negotiating by escalating and de-escalating. So again, finding those common grounds, conflict management, come from a place of empathy. This goes a long way. I often will, when I'm in negotiations, I always try to think, what is the other party thinking? Now, as a real estate agent, as an investor, I've been on both sides of the spectrum, buy and sell. Frank, you guys can sure attest to this, that there's, you know how these seller agents are thinking because you've been seller agents before. So when your clients are sitting there going, I don't understand why their pricing is this, the back of their head as a realtor, you're like, I do, because I had a client like this 2 months ago. That's why they're thinking that way. That definitely helps. And with more experience and more negotiation, do you become better or worse at it? You should become better. So a lot of times when I tell clients, it's scary, it's ugly the first time you do it. But by the 10th, 20th, 100th time, you could sometimes even negotiate in your sleep. Handling objections, this one's important. And I wish I had a full day on this. Naran, Lewis, Ken, we were gifted an unbelievable opportunity to work with a great human being named Grant Cardone, all thanks to a person named Richard Dolan who set all that up. We got to learn a lot from firsthand dealing with sales in Grant Cardone's ecosystem. And I will say, this is just my experience of it. Guys, speak up if you disagree. These are the 3 objections I always heard when we cold called his client list, which was monstrous, by the way. Price objection, spouse objection, timing objection. The other ones there, yes, they're important. Decision maker, quality, value, but it typically is always the first 3. Your price is too high. How do you handle that objection? I have to talk to my wife or partner. Great, I understand that. I need more time to make a decision. When I hear those objections, especially the time one, I look back going, did I provide enough value and information for them to make their decision? Because often what happens when you ask open-ended questions after the fact, you will find out that their objection really isn't real. Now, for some cases, they absolutely are. But for the most part, as a negotiator, I will throw prices too high on people to bring their price even lower. I was willing to pay the price that Mercedes put in front of me that night, but they didn't know that. I'm like, I'm going to squeeze more out of them. Little did I know it would be another $3,300, but that was an example of, I need more time to make this decision. Whereas at the time, and I will share this because it's kind of funny, my ex-wife was in the first negotiation with me. And she's sitting there going, oh my God, I love this car. This is amazing. That's a great price. I'm like sitting there going, shut up. What are you doing? You're killing my negotiation power. So sometimes I said, listen, to the point where she was getting so awkward with the way I was handling and aggressively negotiating with these guys that I just asked her, like, listen, okay, just go for a walk. I got this. Because it made her uncomfortable. Not everybody likes to negotiate. Some people literally will pay the price that is put in front of them when they go into a car dealership because they don't want to negotiate. Or maybe they got so much money they don't even give a crap about negotiating. So when you hear objections, it's up to you to acknowledge the objection. Now, in Grant's world, it was agree, agree, agree. I don't always love that because it's like, yeah, I agree. The price is high. Don't really love that. But if I said, listen, I understand that you may seem that this price is high. Now you come back with adding more value. Yes, I understand. This could be a bit of a high price for this neighborhood, but based off of the comps that I've just currently sold in this Rosedale neighborhood, this is where we came up with the price. Now, as experienced realtors, and I know I keep speaking to the realtors in the room, but as experienced real estate agents, you should know everything that there is to know on that single property that you're currently selling or buying. Now, the beautiful thing about real estate, and sometimes the demise of real estate, is that you have all of these comparables, especially in the condo world. They have the exact same floor plan. They might just be one floor higher. They might just have an extra different type of countertop. But condos can be really easy to negotiate because you say, well, this one sold 2 weeks ago and it's the exact same floor plan, 4 levels down. When you get into unique properties, cottage properties, waterfront properties, the beautiful thing about Toronto is that we have a lot of non-cookie cutter style homes. You go into the burbs, no shot at the burbs, but this is a shot at the burbs. The builders build the same 4 or 5 houses. If you don't believe me, go to Milton, go to Burlington, go to Oakville, go to Mississauga. A lot of these houses look the exact same. Easier to put a comparable against. Now, the reason why it's important to acknowledge their objection is because it shows that you're listening to them. But I will say, address that objection right away. Don't continue on with your sales pitch. Listen, I understand. You know what? This price might be a little high. I'm just curious. If back to your coaching proposal, I now know that you need to be in front of people. And if I can get you at a point where I can value you in front of people to a price point, you're not going to give a shit what the price point is. Because I'm going to get you to focus on the result that the service is going to provide. Now, I'll give you a prime example. If you lock your keys in your car, are you going to try and negotiate with the locksmith? No, because the end result is 100% guaranteed that they're going to get the keys out of the car. Whether you want to pay it or not, that's up to you. But that's an example of a person that, you know what, you can complain all you want, but did they get you the end result? Yes. When you hear price objections, I often tell people, provide more value. Grant taught this to us a lot. And instead of dropping your price, just add more value. As I mentioned, add more value, talking about what I call the FAB, features, advantages, and benefits. And yes, and then focusing on how your product or service can solve the person's problem. I understand it's expensive, but our product or service can save you up to 10 hours per week. Put a price tag on that time. Reverse engineer it. Now, you're talking to a doctor, safe to say, they probably make $300 to $500 an hour. If you could save them $5,000 a week, would they do it? Would they take your service? Possibly, but it's up to you as the person negotiating to point that out. So again, doing research, understanding. For realtors and real estate agents in the room, often there's a lot of times people, yes, want to buy the house. They really want to be in that neighborhood because it's in the same district as the current school that they're going to. You put a price point on that. Hey, listen, I know I can get you a house 2 blocks further, but it's going to pull your kid out of that boundary of the school zone. Are you okay with uplifting and uprooting your family over a mere $25,000, $50,000? You pull on that emotion of the child. Just like I mentioned, add emotion to it. Imagine what that 10 extra hours would do for your life. Build that rapport with your children, with your spouse. You see this a lot in sales, especially when you get pro salespeople, and I'm not one of them. But if you get a husband and wife together, especially as a real estate agent, if I'm in a house, I will ask, what is important to you, Mrs. Wife? Design, high-end kitchen, I need a big island, I need a good fridge, and I want a beautiful ensuite. Okay, Mr. Husband, what's important to you? Oh, I want a man cave, I need a garage. Okay, we might not be able to get all of those things in your price point. What's your most important thing? What's your most important thing? Work them together. But here's the thing, when you're in the sales and negotiation world, when you walk into that room, pay attention to who you're speaking to. If you know that the kitchen's super important to the wife, don't be looking at the husband. really make it about the wife, because she's making the decision power when it comes to that specific room. And when you're in the garage, highlight all the features, advantages, and benefits to the husband. Hey, what car do you currently drive right now? Oh, I drive a Dodge Ram. Oh, do you think this Dodge Ram is going to fit in a townhouse garage? No. This might not be the right property for you. So again, speaking to the right people while you're in the negotiation. This is why it's important when you're sitting in across from maybe a team of negotiation people to understand who you are speaking to. And it's perfectly okay to ask, if we were to come to a consensus today and agree on this price, who is the decision maker? Grant always made us ask this question, who's the decision maker? It's very important. You know why? Because last thing you want to do is do a 2-hour pitch to the wrong person that doesn't even have the authority to make the decision. So sometimes it doesn't hurt to ask these very upfront questions. I lied. I said something earlier that was the most important thing. I'm actually going to say this. When you are in negotiations, it's highlighted in green. Shut up and listen. I know that's abrupt, but too many people just keep talking in negotiations. Even after they've closed the sale. Stop talking and listen. Because the person that is speaking, you're going to get a lot of information and insight from them. You can learn so much when it comes to negotiations. But here's the other beautiful part about it. When you get hit with a price objection and you did fact finding or question through conversation earlier in the negotiation, I see this a lot. People will boast and brag about what they make. Or they'll show up to a listing appointment or a showing appointment and they're driving pretty high-end car. And they're sitting there going, oh, I don't have money for that. Again, what do we not do? Why do you not have enough money? Just really curious. I noticed that you showed up in a G-Wagon. What are they going for right now? $300,000. What's the monthly payment on that? $7,000 a month. Okay, I'm just curious. So are you saying that your G-Wagon is worth more than the mortgage payment? No, I didn't say that. Well, you just mentioned that this price is unaffordable, but you're driving around a car that your monthly payment is going to be more than this mortgage. So what do you value more, the house or the car? Now, I'm not accusing this person of spending where they're spending, but I'm making them think and making them sit back and reflect going, okay, you're right. So let's get back to the drawing board. The $7,000 a month that you're going to pay on a mortgage really isn't that crazy, is it? No. Now you can just start, you poke holes in their story. Now, I'm not asking you to tear their story apart because that could go bad as well, but it does help when you just have this tidbit of information prior to going in for the close. Which then takes me into the kind of last couple slides that I have left. When you have got the close, pro tip, always have a pen that works. And I share this story because it's not mine, but it was actually Grant's. And he shared this story with us, and I thought it was pretty interesting. He actually lost out on a huge deal because he didn't have a working pen. Guess what the person on the other end said? This is a sign. We're not supposed to be doing this deal. Really? Over a pen. So have a working pen. Now, here's the other thing. Make sure everyone understands the agreement. Make sure that it's documented correctly. And please, make sure everyone signs it in its entirety. It only looks bad if you skip steps. And now, especially when you're closing on a real estate deal and they miss key initials or signatures. And then make sure everyone gets copies of it. And then this one is pretty important as well. Stand to sell, sit to close. So when you are doing a negotiation, It's okay to sit there and talk about all the features and advantages and benefits, but typically let's think of a car example. Where do you sign the paperwork? Pretty hard to sign paperwork when you're standing up. So if you're not in the seated position, it's going to be really hard to close them. What do they typically do? Come into my office, please. Come sit. Do you want any water? Do you want any coffee? Make it as comfortable as possible. Offer them a beer, whatever. And then these are some last minute tips. The first one's pretty funny, and I laugh because the rise of digital paperwork and electronic signatures. This is very important. Realtors, mortgage people, if they're using DocuSign, make sure your clients actually read the documents, because with the power of these technologies, DocuSign has this beautiful feature where you can literally just click, 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 sign, done. And the reason why I share this story is because I actually had a client that I sent them the purchase and sale agreement. They were buying a very expensive condo, and I got it back within like 40 seconds. And I'm like, there's no way they read it. And I remember saying to the person, I'm like, pause. You were about to buy an almost $2 million condo. What was in the agreement? They're like, well, I trust you. That's not the point. Your signature's on the purchase and sale agreement, not mine. So if there was a mistake and you signed it, you're validating it. Now, as realtors, we have errors and omission insurance to protect us on stuff like that. But I will say, especially with DocuSign, make sure your clients read it. And you know how you make sure they read it? Do it over the call with them. Now, this goes above and beyond. This is a really pro tip. You better know your agreements forward and backwards, so that when they ask, hey, what's this clause mean? Or what's this condition mean? You better be able to articulate and explain it. Take it one step even further, have an anecdote if they don't understand it. Take it one step even further. You want to really show them, knock their socks off? When you're in negotiations or you're dealing with clients, you're typically sitting across from each other. If you can read your contract upside down, bonus points. That means you know that contract exceptionally well. There is no way you're going to miss something. And for the realtors in the room, you've probably read the purchase and sale agreement 300 times. It doesn't hurt to know it upside down. Practice it. People will laugh at me like, okay. But if you might be able to turn it around, okay, what does that mean? I'm not sure, not understanding. Am I instilling confidence in that person? No. But if I were to say, hey, I can read that and memorize that clause upside down, man, they're going to think this guy knows these contracts back and forth. You don't want to give anybody in negotiations any doubt. Make sure that you are being very transparent. This one's in the negotiation side of things. But if you know there's a cooling off period, especially in new development, don't lie about it. Like, they're entitled to know this information. And if you withhold information that's critical to the contract, that could kill the deal. I've heard this a lot, time and time again, where clients say, my agent never told me that. I didn't know that. Well, either they were inexperienced and didn't know the rules, or they were terrified that if they disclosed it, it could kill the deal. This is why when I tell clients that are going into new builds, hey, just FYI, you have a cooling off period. You have every right to it. Make sure that they tell you. Yeah, and I think that was kind of, oh, last one. Please do not pretend to be a lawyer. You could be as experienced as them, as well knowledgeable, and probably potentially even smarter than some of them. You are not a lawyer. So be careful on what you speak to. You're not a mortgage person. As a realtor, I'm not going to talk about the law. I can provide my opinion and my experiences, but I will always preface and say, before I say what I'm about to say, I want you to know and understand I am not a lawyer. I am not a mortgage professional. I am just providing my experience and opinion. If you want professional advice, I advise you to seek out this lawyer or this person. Okay. And then in summary, obviously listen actively, please. Provide justification, the rationale to your pricing. That can be even as simple as, you know what, the reason why we're priced like this is because our house is literally the best house on the street and no one's beating us. That's why it's priced the way it is. Sometimes sellers just have a crazy number in their head, and you're, as a realtor, you're like, there's no way it's worth this, but I'm going to try and sell it. Offer alternatives. You know what? There's a lot of times where you can move around the price by offering alternatives. We talked about comparisons. Negotiating concessions is obviously very important. And then last one I kind of want to wrap up with is close with confidence. Confidence is very important in negotiations. Now, I'm not a big fan of fake it till you make it, but I will say, if you don't show that side of you, keep that poker face still, you can get a lot of deal done. Doesn't mean you need to know everything, but sometimes just showing that confidence can go a long way. And that's it for me. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on social media. I'm very active on Instagram. You can find me at Kyle Guthro, KYLEGUTHRO, at Kyle Guthro. That's my handles on all of them. And I do have fun with ice waters. Got a couple viral videos on there. And yeah, I hope this was of value. And for all those that are negotiating, just remember, it's not life or death. It's not a hostage situation. Hopefully not. So it could be. Just have fun with it. You're going to make mistakes, especially in real estate, in the grand scheme of things. And I just literally went through this exercise this morning with my client. $5,000 on a $900,000 condo isn't going to make or break you. And I just always ask them, are you planning on selling in the next 6 months? No? Then don't worry about it. So sometimes just reinforcing in them that experience and that value that you have to offer can really go a long way when it comes to negotiations. So with that said, thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
Good job,
Thank you.
Guys, was that not a value or what? Yeah. Show of hands, who found the value out of that call? All right, what is that worth to you? Okay, what is that worth to you? Okay, guys, I'll get you out of here in 2 minutes, okay? Listen, at the bottom line is REWL. We have 3 pillars: coaching, we have tech, and we have opportunities. Okay, that's what you can count on us for. All right, if you found value in what Kyle did or in what Frank did, and you want to talk to one of us, that's in our membership. Okay, guys, 20 minutes once a month with one of our advisors. You can decide what that's worth to you. All right, now, got the tech in there, a bunch of different calculators. Feel free to go through the trial and run through it yourselves, and then we can help you with that through your consultations, okay? Lots of other step-by-step books to help you get in real estate, negotiate, see what the cycles are. There's so much stuff in there, it's bonkers. All right, the AI that we have in there, get in there and play around with it. If you guys want a tutorial, again, use your consultation once a month to connect with one of us, and we'll show you how to use everything that's in there. We have lots of opportunities, different types of things, little partnerships, asset swaps, NICs. I mean, we have a large network of individuals, real estate investors, moguls that we are connected to. We have over 100 years of knowledge combined with all of our teams. So there's lots of opportunity, but everything's got to be customized, okay? Tax assisted real estate. Again, we can teach you all this stuff, but these are the types of opportunities that you won't find in the marketplace. Okay, we are the ones that have unique opportunities that when you connect with us, depending on your circumstance, you're going to want to see what these things have to offer. All right, again, private equity deals, fixed and stuff, there's all kinds of different real estate strategies that we have access to. Again, book your consultation. If you're going to do that, just get into our trial. It's simple. You're going to have 3 days all access. So scan it. Annalise will put the link in the chat. The reason why it's 3 days is probably what you're asking me real quick, is because the opportunities we have in here, this could make you $50,000-$60,000. Like it's crazy. There's all kinds of access you can have and knowledge that you can buy for nothing. And then you can get that in 3 days. Like your first deal could probably be on us, given that we have the AI that can analyze properties in real time. Right, so run through it. And that's it. Guys, was I under 2 minutes? Yeah, good. Get you out of here. All right. Everybody online, guys, come out next time. It's great. Okay, guys, everybody that's here, there's pizza, there's coffee, desserts, that sort of thing. So we'll see you guys next time. Cheers.